Welcome to Channel 99 and GSN News. I'm Dr. Brooks Keel, President of Georgia Southern University. And I'm here to tell you about our show tonight, the place to be for live coverage of election results. Tonight's live election night coverage is brought to you by Georgia Southern's Departments of Communication Arts and Political Science, along with Northland Cable and the City of Statesboro. And tonight's show is being simulcast on radio stations throughout the area, including Statesboro, Swainsboro, and Dublin. We're currently in the Communication Arts Broadcast Studio, which serves as a classroom, laboratory, and studio production site. Here, 30 shows are produced each semester by our multimedia students. Tonight's live election coverage will be a faculty-student collaboration, with faculty members serving as producers and providing technical support. Our students are behind the cameras. They're at the new state-of-the-art switchboard in the control room, and they can be found at computers in the lab monitoring all relevant sites. The live election night coverage is hosted by Dr. Patrick Novotny, the Department of Political Science, and senior multimedia student Mike Lauer. On our news desk with returns is graduate student Garrett Green, and for the first time, we'll have live coverage in the lab where returns are gathered. Senior multimedia student Haley Kettner will be anchoring from that third studio. We'll have interviews with candidates and multimedia representatives along with guest experts from political science, economics, marketing, and communication arts. The latest election information will be available from our news desk. Our anchors will have iPads so we can feed the information immediately to them. And for the first time, we will be employing social network sites, particularly Twitter. You can access our site at GSN 99 News. Like other news organizations, we will not call elections unless we have enough evidence to do so. And we will wait until all polls have closed. Our information is generated by the Georgia Secretary of State's office, the same source of information every media outlet in Georgia is using tonight. So please sit back and enjoy live election night coverage. I think you'll find the show enlightening, engaging, and exciting. Thank you again as we go live from the studios of Channel 99 and our very own award-winning GSN News.
To get on your feet, with your hands in hell, we come on to Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of our national anthem.
The forum did do a really good job of covering most of at least the most important basis facing Statesboro right now, and most importantly, District 1, obviously. That is the particular district that all of these candidates are geared towards. But I think that something that we see quite often in debates and forums is just kind of a lack of specifics. Most of the bases were covered, like I said, but it was just all kind of general. We did not really get to the logistics of how those plans would be put into motion. And then also one thing that specifically did not come up was the Ogeechee River cleanup, which kind of surprised me. It was not mentioned and was not presented as a question, and that is one thing that I would have liked to hear a little bit more about from the candidates.
Okay, that's great. of all the issues that the candidates spoke about at the forum, which one do you think generated the most sort of enthusiasm or energy in the room? I mean, again, you were there, you got to watch the questions and how the candidates, the four candidates, spoke to those issues. I mean, which one generated, in your mind, the most excitement or interest of the evening?
Lots of talk about downtown development, which is definitely something that needed to be talked about a lot. That is something that Statesboro is very focused on right now and is making big movements towards. Specifically, there was a lot of talk about business development on South Main Street, which is definitely a focal point of downtown Statesboro. And it was posed as a specific question, but then also reverted back to in other questions. So that just kind of showed, you know, how relevant it is to where Statesboro is as a city and as an economy, most importantly, is that is really, you know, our next venue of development will be downtown and specifically South Main. Okay,
that's great. Would you have liked to have seen the forum be more of a debate where the candidates might have asked questions of one another? You know, the forum was really one with the moderator, Joe McGlamory, of the Statesboro Herald, who I thought did an excellent job, did an outstanding job,
Absolutely.
Really fielding the questions from online and the questions that were from the audience. But you know, in that setting, of course, it didn't really have the interaction of the candidates with each other. So I just wonder, again, as someone who was actually at the forum and was able to really attend and watch the dynamics there, do you think kind of a debate where the candidates might have interacted and asked questions of one another, would that have provided some interesting dynamics, do you think?
Well, the city council race, of course, is nonpartisan. There is no right or a left, simply four candidates trying to do the best that they can for their district in Statesboro. So I think that it was pretty appropriate that it was a forum and not a debate. We have seen, you know, unfortunately, where we've come with national politics and state politics, that sometimes that can be a really good thing to have debates and have candidates pose questions to each other, but it can also be really bad. And this way, with it being a forum and with the candidates having equal opportunity to answer every question, it gave a pretty fair chance, and it was pretty clean played and was mostly served to be informative to the constituents and to all of the citizens of Statesboro, which it did a great job of doing. However, I would have really liked to see some more interaction between the audience and the candidates specifically. Questions were able to be submitted to the moderator prior to the beginning of the event, but I think that it would have provided even more of a personal feel if attendees could have raised their hand and asked personal questions to the candidates. I think that would have even, you know, furthered the cause of the event.
And that was really going to be my next question. You covered it, I think, very well there, which was, would the sort of a town hall format where voters, you know, and participants, audience members could have asked questions, would that have added another dynamic as well? And I think you did a very nice job talking about that. Let's real quickly wrap this up and really put out there what is really one of the big dynamics of a race like this as well, the possibility of a runoff. We know with four candidates running, that possibility for a runoff is certainly there. Tuesday, December 4th would be the date for the runoff. The last council election, we did not have a runoff. If we do have a runoff, would you like to see another forum or maybe multiple forums? I mean, I wonder if it would be something that you would think that there would be some interest having attended. If the race does come down to two candidates, would it be good to have at least one more forum or debate or opportunity for voters to ask questions of
I
these two
definitely do
candidates?
think that it would be necessary to have at least one more forum, if not more than that. Emma Kelly was definitely a great place to hold this one forum. But I think that it would be a good idea in the future, perhaps, to have several forums and in different locations, perhaps, so as to appeal to specific audiences in the community, perhaps maybe at Georgia Southern University, maybe again at Emma Kelly and, you know, other places around Statesboro, just, you know, to provide an opportunity for different questions and, you know, like we said, the town hall format where perhaps we could have the constituents actually interacting with the candidates.
Well, Reedy Hawkins, thank you so much. Reedy is a senior in multimedia at Georgia Southern, and we are very fortunate to have had you as our eyes and ears at the forum on the 30th, and really glad that you could spend a little bit of your election night tonight to talk with us about these candidates and the forum. Thank you so much.
Absolutely,
And
thank you.
And now we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with continuing election results and coverage.
Thanks for staying tuned. This past July, I had the opportunity to sit down with Ambassador Andrew Young to discuss his impression on the country and the presidential election. Let's take a look.
I mean, America can't, we can't just be America in isolation. We have to be a world leader. Everybody's talking about us and our problems, but we have always been the problem solver for the world. Now, I'm not talking about going to war. I'm talking about economic leadership. We rebuilt Europe. There is a European common market because the United States invested time and talent, and we helped to develop an economy that not only helped rebuild Europe. In the 60s and 70s, it was European growth that stimulated American growth. And when I was mayor of Atlanta in the 80s, a lot of the investment that we had in Atlanta that helped Atlanta grow came from Japan. We had over 300 companies moving in here from Japan. And we used to think that Japan was trying to buy America, but Japan was dependent on America for its survival, and it did the best that it could, and now it's in a slump.
Twitter is the most effective because, I know it sounds weird, because the limited amount of characters, which it might sound weird, but at the same time, you can, because you don't have that much space to go into details of your opinions or stuff like that. People don't really know the background of the information you're giving. Like you can't fit "don't vote for Obama" because of you can only put "don't vote for Obama." You know what I mean? So the lack of amount of characters that you can post take stuff out of character. Even with texting, people take texting out of character, like who's she talking to, like stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like Twitter definitely has the most effect.
Why do you think that social media affects the election?
I think social media affects election because it's just become such a big part of American society. So everybody's always on Facebook, always on Twitter. There's so many politicians that are on Twitter, celebrities, and everybody's going to pay attention to what those people say. So if they post it, like if CNN posts on Twitter what Romney said last night in the debate or what Obama said, everybody's going to read it. And it's going to affect how people view it, just because people are so influenced by the social media now.
Okay, so will it affect your vote for our election?
I don't think so. I try to ignore that. It's kind of like rumors to me when you're in, elementary school. Somebody passes you a note. Oh, this is what so-and-so said. So I'd rather hear it straight from their mouth, which I know is hard because it's not like I know them or anything. But I'd rather hear what they say than what somebody is saying on a blog or on Facebook or on Twitter.
This one guy who I work with, he told me on Facebook he took a poll, and the poll told him he should vote for Romney. He doesn't know who made that poll. I'm not saying it's wrong for him to vote for Romney, but to vote simply because of a poll you took, you can put any answer in there and it tell you to vote for Romney. Just like you can put any answer in any poll and it tell you to vote for Obama. A lot of people, especially the younger generation, are voting simply for the fact that what they see on social media, especially African Americans. They are voting for Obama just because he's black. A lot of people can't tell you his policies or his beliefs, and a lot of people like Romney, there's a thing going around on Instagram, they'll be like, Romney don't know my struggle. You don't know if Obama knows your struggle because you don't follow the debates, you don't read into the policies. I just think that social network is going to have a lot of effect on people, but myself, no.
Okay, well, with it being as simple as a like on Facebook or a retweet on Twitter, how, or should I say, what does social media mean to you in the election?
Okay, so usually I don't like to get on Facebook and Twitter and stuff during the debates because they're kind of, the tweets and the Facebook statuses are kind of ridiculous. But I can say that I did make a Facebook status about when they were discussing abortion, because that's a big thing in women's rights and stuff. I did get a lot of likes on it because I feel as a whole bunch of men in Congress, and whoever decides shouldn't tell women what they should do with their bodies because they would never have an abortion themselves. But I guess a lot of friends on my Facebook personally and my Twitter agree with me. So yeah, social network is kind of big on with debates and stuff right now.
Okay, and I noticed that you said abortion is definitely a hot topic. So abortion will be an issue that will affect your vote depending on which candidate you choose?
Not abortion in particular, but women's rights and women's bodies and stuff like that. The whole Planned Parenthood debate and all that going on.
CNN, Fox News, NBC have declared Obama as the winner. Do you think that's too little premature?
Well, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, at some point or another, the election is going to be called. I think probably a lot of people right now around the country are just really in some ways amazed that it's happened this hour as opposed to 3 a.m. or 5 a.m. Or 11 o'clock tomorrow morning or 6 weeks from now, in the sense that the questions about the margins of some of the states, particularly Ohio, with questions of the possible recount going in and the counting of provisional ballots. If the margins hold in these states, then I think it really does. I guess an election that I'm really in some ways thinking about is 1948, Harry Truman in that famous election. Very close, photo finish in many ways. The predictions went back and forth, of course, throughout the night. And in a sense, I think this election might be compared to that by some of the headlines and writers tomorrow. Just an election with, of course, with an incumbent president. Incumbent presidents typically have the advantage going in. Now, having said that, we've had 10 incumbent presidents that have been defeated in our country's history, 3 in the last 35 years. Jimmy Carter, of course, Gerald Ford, George H.W. Bush. So to defeat an incumbent president is not only possible, but it is something that has happened indeed in relatively recent times, the last being in 1992. So again, that kind of outcome, there was a narrative that was developing, that was beginning to shape, that for many looked as though this was going to be that kind of upset. So I'm sure right now, certainly in Boston, where the Romney campaign has been watching the night, I'm sure that already there is a lot of a sort of sober reflection to think about. Right. Well, what are the analogies here? I mean, where do you begin to point in terms of what could have been done differently, or might have the strategy been differently? But I'll say something that I said earlier about the House race. The families, the staff, the young people in particular who've worked on these campaigns, this nation, after every election, probably doesn't pause long enough to express its gratitude and its appreciation for all the men, all the women, all the young people, the veterans who've served in our country, who've now been serving on the front lines of their candidates, working, going door to door, the college students who are juggling full class loads like you, who have been out working with our campaigns. But we had a poignant piece earlier, and I know that both of us were really struck by it, on our soldiers to students. Here at Georgia Southern, something that we're very proud of. I believe you said the flag, in fact, was given to us, loaned to us by the ROTC, and we're thankful and grateful for their service. Without the service of our soldiers, without the service of our public servants, our teachers, our police, our firemen, the nurses, the physicians who are in emergency rooms tonight, right now, who have not thought about this election in the last 10 hours because they are 10 hours into a surgery, they are 10 hours into a life-saving procedure. The teacher who's been doing grading tonight and watching through the next room, the TV, while they've been grading. The person who's working a second or third shift. People who have gone to bed, 4 hours ago or 3 hours ago because they're the folks that put the food on our table because they're going to be getting up at 4 a.m. It takes a lot of people to make a big nation work. A big nation's work tonight. And I know that, again, there'll be people who are going to have hard feelings as we go forward. But this is what America does. Right. And to be reminded of reminding ourselves to thank especially our soldiers and And our young men and women are those who serve in uniform, whatever that uniform be, but in particular, those who serve in the armed services. We thank them. Without them, we could not do
Absolutely.
this job.
And here at GSN, we'd also like to thank, again, the physical plant for helping us get our set ready. And we'd also like to thank our theater department for our curtain, and again, ROTC for the flag. And we'd like to end this election night here at GSN, throwing it back to our Soldier Series.
Coming from an all Air Force family, it's a little bit different going into the Marines.
They all had different reasons for signing up, and they all came out of it with different experiences. But most profoundly, to do what they did, they had to sacrifice something for all of us.
I wasn't applying myself in school. I was very smart. I did all the tests and aced all the tests, but never did homework.
And I didn't really apply myself at school. I managed to squeeze B's and C's out.
I was just busy flirting, partying, and playing sports.
My father was in the Air Force, so it was just a natural progression for me to want to join the military and kind of follow my father's footsteps.
But I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I was like, hey, let's go be a badass. At least that's what I thought it was at the time.
While their experiences were different in many ways, one thing they all had in common was their concern for what they would do after they left active service. And continuing their education is what seems to be their common bond.
I was lucky enough to have a twin, and his name's Brandon. We kind of discussed it, and we didn't know what we wanted to do with college, grew up poor.
The military had really good benefits as far as taking care of me in college, giving me what I need to succeed.
With all of the sacrifices made for the sake of others, it would be what they learned while serving that would provide for them after coming home. It would be the experiences they endured while serving for a greater cause that would make them stronger, more successful, and independent civilians. And they would surely need it.
I mean, and the military helped me to become mature and responsible and focused and driven.
Just with all that experience, it forces you to grow up.
We knew if we went to college, we'd kind of piss it away and, rack up a bunch of student loans.
So it was something that my parents really thought would do me some good.
It would have to start somewhere, though, and the first sacrifice was the decision that they all had to make. The decision to do something for others that would eventually make each one of them a better person and stronger member of American society.
Enlisted was fairly simple, considering we do 50,000 people a day.
They had very little time to prepare for a journey that would eventually bring them all back home, but a journey that would ultimately change them all in many ways, forever.
Right off high school, I had about a week after graduation and then went straight to boot camp.
I got shipped off that right before the day after Christmas.
For about 6 months, I was in training for whether it be boot camp to combat training to my tech school.
Foreign lands with foreign traditions, they would all experience the world through a different perspective. Their jobs would be a major force in changing each one of them in so many ways. And their jobs wouldn't only keep them safe, but they were individually designed to keep their fellow soldiers and all of us safe too.
I got deployed to RC Southwest down in Afghanistan, Camp Leatherneck, Camp Dwyer, and within these two bases, I was responsible for all the ammo, as far as all the ammunition, and within Afghanistan, we were responsible for at this one hub.
With the experience of enrolling in the military, there would be a foreshadowing of the experience they were all in store for after returning home and enrolling in college.
You just sign your paperwork and you're just a number after that.
At the end of my last semester, it was last May, I'd finished my last final and I was done, and I get a call from one of my buddies telling me that, hey, 2nd Platoon, my old platoon, Charlie Company, 3509, got into a bad attack today.
This was supposed to be my senior year as far as all my friends are graduating. So just spending those last crucial years or moments with your friends, that's something you really can't ever get back.
And I collapsed right there after being on a super high about being done with finals, and hey, I made it through my first semester. I ended up having a 3.9. I knew I was doing great. I aced all my finals. And then all of a sudden, that was all negated.
That first year that I was over in Germany, I was actually separated.
Despite all of the sacrifices that needed to be made to do the jobs they had to do, the training they experienced before ever leaving is what would ultimately help them get through each day and stay alive.
Thinking really goes out the window, and it's just more of a do what you're told type thing.
If you're not on point, you're not serious about what you're doing, you could let one of your brothers could get killed overseas.
Today really doesn't affect tomorrow, and there's no long-term goals. It's just do what's in front of you right here, right now.
You're out and you're on your own. You've been on your own for an extended period of time. You don't live with your parents. You don't have anything to fall back on but yourself.
I was so on track to be careerist, 20 years service, easy, and all of a sudden to have your whole world just come crushing down to a halt. And at that point you're like, what am I supposed to do?
They all had to make different twists and turns in order to get to the place they all wanted to end up at. And once they arrived, it wasn't any easier than the bumpy road they traveled down to get there.
I tell you what, I've done more. I'm 22 years old, but I know what a hard day's work is. Through Afghanistan, through working since I was 16, I can get a lot done in one day.
There's a lot of things that you need to take care of to get re-enrolled.
I fill out this paperwork, it gets mailed to somebody else. I wait 2 weeks for them to get a response. They need IRS tax return transcript. That takes 5 days for me to get a hold of the IRS, and then 5 days for them to send it to the school. I mean, it's an extended period of time that, you know, you go through. And I'm in classes and they tell me this, and it's like, where the hell am I gonna pull $5,500 out?
I feel like sometimes that they do it that way on purpose because they hope that some people would become frustrated and just give up.
I'm not saying I should be taken care of, but there should be a better route as far as getting all this accomplished.
It's the people who are the ones who really help these student soldiers. And it's the same people who try to make sense of a system that sometimes seems to have no rhyme or reason. It's the people who end up taking some burdens off of these men and women who want nothing more than to put their training to use as a college graduate.
If it wasn't for the congressman from California that stepped in and intervened on my behalf, I probably would have been put out of service, if not dead, on the side of the streets in Bosnia somewhere.
Now I have a VA rep through East Georgia, Miss Jill. Miss Jill is a sweetheart, and she works so hard for me. She has, and she's still, even today, I was on the phone with her earlier because my financial aid still hasn't gone through for this semester.
But you'd be surprised of how many people love to hear, hey, I just got back from Afghanistan and I've got this problem. And hands down, it was so many people were willing to jump in and help you.
Augusta Tech did a good job of accommodating me and my disabilities and, you know, special seating arrangements and stuff like that.
I gotta say the same thing for Georgia Southern. They have a very good department that handles disabilities.
I don't believe there's a single person that is responsible, whether it be a position held in office, that can make it better for a student coming back.
And there isn't a single person for sure who can make it better. There must be a community of people waiting for their return. A community of people made up of all of us. An American community who makes an attempt to understand what these men and women have just sacrificed. For me and for you. But the greatest irony of it all is that without the chaotic and clustered system that civilians must abide by when trying to help a student soldier, and with all of the inherent flaws in the process, it is an American process, and we wouldn't be the same without it.
There's this whole mindset about the military being inefficient and what have you, and that might be because of the bureaucratic involvement, but if you weren't to have that, I think that you would, the serious repercussions would be that we would end up doing something that we would not be able to walk away from, I think.
Shay Thomas, GSN 99.